Hello, it's Sarah from Hardcover Hearts, and I'm here with my week of reading wrap-up. This is where I talk about the books that I read this week, what I'm currently reading, and potentially could read next week based on my mood. I'm so glad that I don't call this Friday Reads because this is the second week in a row that I have been unable to get a Friday video up because of literally environmental factors. So this week, I'm not sure if you followed the news. If you're not following the news, you're so wise because it's really bleak right now. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we have had nothing but horrendous air quality. Our AQI score, which normally is under, like I'd say between like 30 and 40, has been astronomical in the 300 range. I think at one point, that was actually the worst air quality in the entire world. And it's because of all the wildfires that have been happening in California. And now Oregon is facing the same dilemma. And so my thoughts and prayers and hopes and everything are sent up to Oregon. This is just really, really bleak. And unfortunately, it's one world. So as the wind pushes it's pushed out across the world. And so it's just bad times. And so we've had to be in the apartment, shutting all the windows and even having the drapes closed to help minimize against any air coming in through the seams and cracks of the windows. And anything over 80, I start to get a headache and I feel a lot of pressure. And so it's just been very difficult. It's been difficult to work. It's been difficult to read and to do anything like that. And yesterday I couldn't do it. My face was all puffy. My voice is still a little raspy, but we're so much better. We went to sleep and it was like 300, almost 310. And we woke up and it was under 200. So that was a magnificent change, really big change. So I figured I would try to get this video made. And this is like the third time I'm trying this video. Because as I started to do this, all of a sudden outside, there are people doing landscaping. This is really not the time to do any kind of landscaping. It's a horrible idea because already the air quality for landscaping is bad, but then you add all this other stuff in the environment and it's horrendous. So you may hear both my air filter system, which is right here. Sorry about it, but I'm not turning it off. So there might be a gentle white noise hum through the background of this. And then every once in a while you may hear an electric drill or saw from the landscaper. So apologies for that. But needs must, and I need to get this out. So we're going to keep going. All right. So, okay, let me tell you a little bit about what I read this week. The first one was just such a big bummer. My God, I hinted that this was going in this direction, and there was nothing in the final section that saved it. It's a Missalliance by Anita Brookner. Leo from Little Book Life and I are reading her entire oeuvre. This is number 6. And this is just a big miss. The story is of Blanche Vernon. Blanche is an older woman. I'd say she's maybe in her 40s, I would say. She's married to Bertie, or was married. He's left her. He's left her for someone young named Mousy, of course. And, she's shocked, surprised. She doesn't really know what to do. But Bertie hasn't really left her because he keeps coming by, and he'll show up in the evening and sometimes have dinner with her and sometimes have drinks with her, even though he's already living with Mousy. And she's a little lost. She's spending her days going to the British Museum, which, hey, I can think of many worse ways to spend your time. But it does feel like she's just kind of wandering through life. She has found herself in a position where she has changed who she is in order to accommodate her husband, who has now left her. And so she's lost. And she finds that she's entranced by kind of taken in by the Renaissance art, specifically the nymphs of Renaissance art. And so she's imagining that. And it feels like this might be in the early 60s because she comes upon two characters. Sally and Eleanor. Sally is a young mother, and Eleanor is her 3-year-old daughter. And she meets them while she is working at kind of volunteering, it feels like, at this hospital. And they're in the waiting room. And Sally is kind of one of those characters that just kind of lives her own life how she wants. She's kind of a leech in the sense that she's very gorgeous and glamorous and knows it. And it kind of uses her powers of persuasion and just feels that feels very entitled to other people's money, other people's time, other people's things. And Eleanor is a very interesting character because even though she's 3, she's not speaking yet, but she seems to be very precocious and very aware of what's happening. And Blanche gets pulled into their web, and kind of ingratiates herself into their sphere at a very strange turn. So I'm not going to say any more about the plot, but I will say that what didn't work for me in this book is there is an undercurrent of bitterness here. Anita Brookner is known for sharp barbs, and she's known for very astute critiques of characters and characterization and understanding who people are and being able to pinpoint that exact thing that differentiates them or that matters in a scene. And in this, while she does that, there isn't the levity or the humor or beauty to balance it out. And so it just feels very bitter. It feels very bitter. It feels very meandering and pointless. There's a lot of pointlessness here. And I just did not like it. Leo agreed, and he rated this higher than I did. I gave this a 2. I just really think that it feels like she was trying too hard with this, which is a shame because the last book, Family and Friends, was fantastic. And it feels like she kind of went back to an old stomping ground, but really angrily. There's something going on here, and I don't know what it is, but I don't want any more of this. So I'm hoping that number 7, when we get to it next month, is going to be better. Then this is another miss for me in a big, big way. This is the 3rd in the series, her Royal Spyness series by Rhys Bowen. This is Royal Flush. And flush is a good term because I'm flushing the series from here on out. Sorry, the pun just wrote itself. So in this, we have Georgiana, also known as Georgie. She is 38th in line to be queen, and has left. She's kind of in London because her brother and sister-in-law really can't afford her. They're at that stage where there's not really anything coming into their Scottish castle, and so they're trying to keep things really, really simple up there. And so she decamps and goes down to London, and she's living in their London home, but she doesn't have any servants, and so she's needing to make money, which is not something you do when you're royalty. So I love her spunk, I love her creativity, and she's also very innocent. So she has this naivete, and she's running with this very in crowd of royalty that are wild, and it's kind of between the wars. In this one specifically, she is asked. She kind of gets herself in a situation, and she has to decamp and go back to the Scottish Highlands to spend time with her family, and then she's going to Balmoral because she's been asked to by the Queen. And we have, it's kind of fun. You get Wallace Simpson as a character, and the Queen's very upset with her son spending so much time with Wallace Simpson, the American who is not yet divorced. She's still keeping her husband in tow. And they've all decamped and staying at her family estate because they're not allowed to stay at Balmoral, which is sending her sister-in-law into fits. So it's kind of funny that she's escaping kind of a potential scandal in London. She goes to the Scottish Highlands and her sister-in-law, who usually can't stand her, is so happy to see her because she can help her juggle all of these people. They hatch a plan to get rid of them by driving them away through Scottish tradition, like playing the bagpipes at dawn and things like that, which is kind of funny. all these shenanigans and things happen she's kind of caught in the middle of them, and she's trying to figure out who is trying to hurt these different members of the royal family. Fun, light, and everything, but when it lost me is there is a part kind of in the climax when you find out who's been doing all these bad things. There is a scene that is so ridiculous. It makes absolutely no sense. I'm reading it and I'm like, please tell me she's not doing this. And it was so over the top, completely bizarre and ridiculous that I actually felt like she was making fun of the reader. And, so she's lost my trust. And once an author loses my trust, I didn't need anything more than effervescent, fun, light fare here. But that was too much. It was too ridiculous and strained my already thin credulity with this book. So I will not be continuing her Royal Spyness series. Then I moved on to a much better book. This is called The Holdout by Graham Moore. Amy had talked about this. I'll put a link to her channel and her video specifically about this below because it completely pulled me in. I do like procedural type books, like police procedurals, and this is a little different spin on this. This is the courtroom procedural, where we're in the jury panel that was sequestered. What's happened is that there was a very famous case 10 years ago where our main character, Maya, was sequestered in this jury. She was a very optimistic young woman, had just campaigned for Obama. Obama was in the office and she didn't know what to do with herself. She's at a crossroads and she gets put on this panel for this jury. And it's a case of a young Black man who was a tutor teacher and a disappearance of a young 15-year-old white heiress. And they've never found the body, but he is being tried for her murder. And our character, Maya, is the sole holdout who ends up changing everyone's opinion on this jury. And now we're 10 years later in a podcast a la Serial. I'm not sure if you've ever listened to that. It's fantastic. The first season is remarkable. But they're pulling everyone together into the hotel that they were sequestered at for a reunion because one of the people, this man named Rick, who she had a brief dalliance with, has never let this case go. And he is so convinced that he was manipulated into changing his verdict, and that he's there to kind of present new facts to the jury to see if they would have changed their mind. And so it's just such a great premise, such a great way to set it up. Maya has gone on, because of everything that she learned through that process, she's become a lawyer herself, a defense lawyer. And so she has a different eye as she's coming back all these years later. While they're there in this hotel, a murder happens of one of the jurors. And I'm not going to say any more. This was very well written. The plot is fantastic, really tightly constructed, very good pacing, and the characters were really, really good. I'm very impressed with this. So I highly recommend it, and thank you, Amy, for recommending it, because I probably would have passed it right by. Next up, I finished Intimations by Zadie Smith. So this is a book of 6 essays that she has written during the pandemic. Zadie Smith is known as both an essayist and a fiction writer. I tend to prefer her nonfiction to her fiction. She lives part-time in New York and teaches at, I think New York University, and then also lives in London with her husband, who's also a writer. I think he's a poet, and their children. I love her essays. I love her voice. This is a series of 6 essays, as I mentioned, and it's all set during the pandemic. I liked all of them, but some of them really stood out to me and meant a lot. The first essay I want to talk about is all about how you have a relationship with someone. You know them. You could, if you saw them on the street, you would recognize them. You would have something to discuss. but you don't know their name and nothing about them. It's all based on this specific context. This one is titled "The Man with the Strong Hands," and then it's all about how her relationship with this man that she gets massaged by. And she talks about, I related to this so much. She talks about how she lives for massages, but she doesn't give herself a lot of time in her day, and she can't stand to just be on a table and get massaged. She always wants to be reading. Sound familiar to many of us, right? And so chair massages are how she does it, because she can read while she's in the chair massage. Brilliant. And I will say that I don't do chair massages, but I do reflexology massages, or did pre-pandemic, where I get to sit in this incredibly comfortable chair and someone will massage my feet for a very long time while I read. It is an absolute and utter delight. I highly recommend it. But so she talks about her relationship with this man and how they don't really know anything about each other, but they know each other and they have this intimate connection. I thought it was very good. Another one was postscript, Contempt as Virus. I thought this was incredibly effective, taking the idea of virus and the infection of racism, the infection of contempt that we have for other people, and exploring that as a concept. I loved that one. But the one that I really wanted to take a moment and read something to you is out of A Woman with a Little Dog. So I think I mentioned that I live in an apartment building, and so does Zadie. So this is it just rings very true to me. So I wanted to read this to you, if you will indulge me. There is an ideal rent-controlled city dweller who appears to experience no self-pity, who knows exactly how long to talk to someone in the street, who creates community without over-sentimentalizing the concept or ever saying aloud the word community, and who always picks up after their dog, even if it's physically painful to do so, whose daily breakfast is a cigarette and a croissant from the French place on the corner, although to accommodate her new walker, Barbara now eats and smokes on the bench outside the hairdresser, properly intended for the clients of the salon. But no one minds, because this is Barbara and Beck we're talking about, regular in their habits and known to all. There she sat on that last day. I was passing with my little dog, a final chance for Maud to pee before we put her in the rental car. And I could see Barbara was preparing to bark one of her ambivalent declamations at me about the weather or a piece of prose or some new outrage committed by the leader of a country which, in Barbara's mind, only theoretically includes her own city. Already missing New York, I was keen to hear it. Instead, she sucked hard on her cigarette and said, in a voice far quieter than I've heard her use, "Thing is, we're a community, and we've got each other's back. You'll be there for me, and I'll be there for you, and we'll all be there for each other, the whole building. Nothing to be afraid of. We'll go through this, all of us together." "Yes, we will," I whispered, hardly audible, even to myself, and walked on, maintaining a 6-foot distance, whether to conform with the new regulations or to avoid Beck biting me in some vulnerable spot I couldn't tell. I think that's a very Zadie Smith passage right there, and thank you for letting me share it with you. So loved it, absolutely loved it. I gave it a 5. I would absolutely read this again. I have a feeling I'm going to come back to it through the extended pandemic. And then lastly, get your delights where you can. I knew this book was coming out this week. I knew I was going to read it too fast. I knew I was going to regret it. And yet I also knew I was going to do it. So this was the newest Louise Penny book, which came out this week. All the Devils Are Here. This is number 16 in the Chief Inspector Gamache series. So when the moment that my library hold came in, because I jumped on it early, 5 o'clock came and I moved from my desk to my chair and I just started in. Delight from the absolute beginning. I think this might be my favorite of her work of this series. We are focused very intently on his family in this one. And it's set not in Three Pines in outside of Quebec. We are instead in Paris. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about what got us here because I don't want to spoil anything that came up to this in the series. I would just say that the Titan lens around his family allows us to get a lot of insights into things that we've come to expect and learned in the series up to this point. But there's also interesting history of Paris and the intersection into his family. And of course, the murder happens while they're there. This was very tense. It was very introspective. The history of Paris and a little bit about the seedy underbelly, about the ways where secrets and history just kind of layers on top of things that have happened in the past and allow people to forget painful things, all come up to the forefront. And I want to go back to Paris now. I want to kind of be infused with all of this thing. This is a really great, if you're missing Paris and you like Louise Penny, I think you'll be very satisfied with this book. Again, I'm not going to say too much about it other than I loved it. I think this might be my favorite of the series. So well done. And now I'm bereft to wait at least another year for her next one. So that's what I read. Really wonderful reading experience. In terms of what I'm currently reading, I'm picking a little bit at both the Virginia Woolf diaries as well as Proust, Swann's Way, which is #1 of In Search of Lost Time. Other than that, I don't know what I'm going to read. I may not read very much because with the weather as it is, with the air quality as it is, it's just really hard to focus. We'll see. I still have all the books that I put out last week for the kind of September spooky vibe that I wanted to kind of jump into, but we'll see. I'm not going to make any promises to myself. I'm just going to allow myself to pleasure read and see what comes up. So with that, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all stay safe. Please maintain safe social distance, wear masks, wash your hands frequently, and don't touch your face, and I will look forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you, and see you then. Bye.